Hey there, Grayson and Beya fans. Are you ready for another awesome adventure? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the magical world of Grayson and his best buddy, Beya. Grayson may be just 3 years old, but with his stuffed bear Beya by his side, who turns into a real talking bear cub at night, there's never a dull moment. Whether it's learning something new, exploring the world, or just sharing giggles, you never know what these two will get up to next.
Let's go, Beya.
So sit back, grab your favorite snack, maybe some broccoli like Grayson, and get ready for today's fun-filled Grayson and Beya story.
Here we go. Ooh.
Jim forgot Grayson's blanket. Chapter 1, The Morning Rush.
It was a crazy morning at Grayson's house. Jim, Grayson's dad, shot out of bed like a rocket.
Grayson, we overslept.
He shouted, fumbling around with one shoe in his hand and toothpaste smeared on his cheek. Grayson, a 3-year-old bundle of energy, sat up with his hair sticking out in every direction.
But Dad, where's breakfast? I want pancakes.
He demanded, rubbing his eyes.
No time for pancakes.
Jim replied, grabbing random things and tossing them into Grayson's school bag. He snagged Grayson's shoes, his favorite water bottle, and a sock. Just one, though, in their mad dash, Jim stuffed everything into the car, including Grayson, who was still wearing his pajamas backwards. They zoomed down the street, Jim frantically steering with one hand while trying to comb his hair with the other. Grayson giggled from the back seat.
Dad, you look like a porcupine.
He laughed, pointing at Jim's wild hair. Jim glanced in the rearview mirror, chuckling nervously.
Well, at least I remembered your water bottle.
He said proudly. They screeched into the school parking lot. Jim leaped out of the car, triumphantly holding Grayson's water bottle in the air like it was a trophy. Grayson blinked at his dad and then looked down at his backpack.
Wait, Dad, did you bring my purple snuggle blanket?
Jim's eyes widened in horror. He had the look of someone who just realized he forgot to put the bread in the toaster.
Oops.
He muttered, his face turning the same shade as Grayson's blanket. Grayson's face fell.
But Dad, it's soft and cozy, and it's purple.
He whined, stomping his feet dramatically.
The school backup blanket is scratchy and smells like old cheese.
I'm sorry, buddy.
Jim said, scratching his head.
I can't go back now. I'll be super late for work.
Grayson groaned and mumbled all the way to his classroom.
I need my purple snuggle blanket. Stinky cheese blanket. Yeah.
Chapter 2, The Magic Walkie-Talkie Plan.
In his classroom, Grayson sat down with a huff, feeling grumpy, as Mrs. Alice started talking about the alphabet. Grayson rummaged through his backpack, looking for anything that could make his day better. That's when he saw it, his walkie-talkie. Not just any walkie-talkie. This one was magical. Only Grayson knew its secret power. It could bring his stuffed animal Beya to life. He grabbed the walkie-talkie, hid under his desk that was covered with tall towers, and whispered the special spell.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, Beya, Beya, wakey up.
Back at Grayson's house, Beya, the light brown stuffed bear, was lying on Grayson's bed, snoring softly and quietly. Beya's walkie-talkie, which sat next to him, crackled to life.
Hello, Grayson. What's going on?
Beya said groggily, still half asleep.
I was dreaming about swimming in a pool of pancakes.
Beya, Dad forgot my purple snuggle blanket.
Grayson whispered furiously.
And now I have to use the backup blanket, and it smells like old cheese.
Beya gasped.
Not the cheese blanket. This is an emergency.
Beya tumbled out of bed, now fully awake.
Don't worry, Grayson. I'll find your blanket.
Beya darted around Grayson's messy room. He peeked under the bed and grinned.
Ah, got it. It was under the bed. Of course, Dad missed it. He can't even find his own keys half the time.
Chapter 3, Husky Express Delivery.
Grayson sighed with relief.
You found it. But how will you get it to me?
He asked, his voice a whisper.
Easy peasy.
Beya said confidently. He whistled out the window, and seconds later, a fluffy baby husky bounded into the room, wagging its tail excitedly.
Hello, Husky. We need to deliver this blanket to Grayson at school.
The husky barked and wagged its tail even harder, almost knocking over a lamp. Beya climbed onto Husky's back, holding the purple snuggle blanket high like a flag.
To the school. Husky, full speed ahead.
Chapter 4, Muddy Puddles and Blanket Dramas.
Husky sprinted through the yard with Beya, clutching the blanket. All was going well until they encountered their first problem, a gigantic muddy puddle blocking their path.
Oh,
Beya muttered.
muddy water ahead. Husky, jump as high as the sky.
With a mighty leap, Husky soared over the puddle. But as they landed on the other side, a splash of mud flew up, hitting the blanket. Beya looked at the muddy splotches and sighed.
Well, at least it's still purplish. Sort of.
They continued racing toward the school, but their troubles weren't over. Suddenly, a group of coyotes appeared on the path, their noses twitching as they sniffed the air.
Oh no!
Beya exclaimed.
They think the blanket is food because Grayson didn't wash his hands after eating chicken nuggets and fries with ketchup last night.
The coyotes licked their lips, eyeing the blanket hungrily.
Husky zigzagged like a squirrel.
Beya shouted. The husky darted left and right, dodging the coyotes who looked more and more confused. Finally, they managed to outrun them. Beya wiped his forehead in relief.
Phew, that was a close one. Who knew a blanket could cause so much trouble?
Chapter 5, The Skunky Shortcut.
Thinking they were in the clear, Beya and Husky decided to take a shortcut through the park. But halfway through, they skidded to a stop. There, right in front of them, stood a skunk with its tail high in the air, looking very, very nervous.
Oh no, not a skunk.
Beya whispered.
If it sprays, the blanket will smell like cheese and stink bombs?
Husky whimpered and tried to back up, but Beya shook his head.
No time for that. We have to be brave. Husky, turn around quick.
Husky did an impressive U-turn, but not before the skunk let out a little eft. They escaped without getting sprayed directly, but the blanket caught a faint whiff of the skunk's stink. Beya sniffed the blanket and made a face.
Ew, yuck. It's got a hint of skunk now, but still better than the cheese blanket.
Chapter 6, Grayson's Countdown.
At school, it was almost nap time. Grayson nervously stared at the classroom door. Mrs. Alice was setting up the dreaded backup blanket. Grayson grabbed his walkie-talkie and whispered,
Beya, where are you? Nap time is starting.
2 minutes away.
Beya replied through the walkie-talkie. Grayson lay down on his mat, his nose wrinkling at the backup blanket.
1, 10, 4.
He counted, his eyes getting heavier with each number. By the time he reached 20, he was fast asleep. Meanwhile, Beya and Husky dashed into the school, sneaking past the front desk, where Mr. Wiggins, the janitor, was napping. They tiptoed into the classroom, where Ms. Alice quickly swapped the backup blanket with Grayson's favorite, slightly muddied, and a little smelly purple snuggle blanket with Beya tucked in it. Grayson woke up mid-nap to find himself wrapped in his beloved blanket with Beya beside him. He grinned sleepily and hugged it tight.
Beya, you did it.
He whispered to himself, snuggling into its softness.
Chapter 7. A smelly but happy ending.
What Grayson didn't know was the truth behind the whole blanket rescue. During his lunch break, Jim had actually driven back home, found the blanket and Beya under the bed, stepped on a puddle while carrying it, got it stuck in the car door, and even ran through the park's skunk zone. By the time he got to school, the blanket was, let's say, well-traveled. Mrs. Alice had quietly replaced the blanket while Grayson napped, giving Jim a thumbs up for his heroic effort. When Grayson learned the full story later, he laughed until his belly hurt.
Dad, you're as clumsy as a penguin on roller skates.
He giggled. Jim chuckled and ruffled Grayson's hair.
Well, I might be clumsy, but I do try my very best.
Grayson grinned and hugged his dad.
You did great, Dad. But you know what? From now on, I'll let Mommy pack my things the night before so you don't have to go on a blanket adventure.
Beya, sitting nearby, nodded in agreement.
That's a smart idea, Grayson. Less stinky adventures, more happy nap times.
Grayson snuggled his purple blanket, still a little dirty and smelly, but full of love.
Next time,
He said with a yawn.
I'll make sure Mommy makes everything ready so we can have more time for pancake and waffle breakfasts.
Jim laughed, Beya yawned, and Grayson drifted off again, this time knowing that tomorrow would be much smoother, well, hopefully.
The end.